Hello, everyone. I'm André Miceli, and this is another interview from MIT Technology Review Brasil. I am with Amy Nordrum. She's an executive editor from MIT Technology Review USA and the editor of the 10 Breakthrough Technologies list. So, Amy, it's very nice to have you here. I'm very happy to talk to you.
Thanks for having me, Andre. It's so good to be here with you today.
Cool. I mean, what are the 10 breakthrough technologies and why they are important?
Great question. So here at MIT Technology Review, we have a newsroom of about 30 reporters and editors who are totally focused on understanding the significance of emerging technologies and bringing them to all of you. We cover areas like artificial intelligence, biotech, computing and climate change, and lots of other things across the broader world of technology. And we, as a staff, are always kind of trying to figure out what really matters and what's coming up next. So every year, our reporters and editors put together a list of 10 technologies that we think matter most right now. It means they already are or will soon have a big impact on our lives. And this year is actually the 22nd year we've put out this list, and it just came out recently. And it's really our way of kind of sharing what we're seeing across all these different areas of emerging technology and what we think is important for everybody to know.
Yeah, we are going to go dip into the list, but before, I want to hear a little bit more about your role in the process. How do you guys decide it, and what is the methodology to determine which technology is more important than others?
That's a great question. So this list is determined entirely by the editors and journalists we have on staff. There's no, outside judges or nominations in this process. And it takes months to actually get to the final product, the list that you see available today on the site. So we start out by having everybody in the newsroom nominate technologies that they think should make the list. And this past year, we had more than 50 nominees, and we have a couple of brainstorming discussions where people put forward items and maybe they'll write up a short pitch or they'll just verbally pitch it in a meeting. This year, our first meeting to discuss our nominees was way back in July. So that's when we started this process, and the package came out in January. So you can see we go through like a few rounds of discussion between our staff to really narrow the nominees down. And the editors on our staff, including myself, will make one kind of big cut to get down to a list of semifinalists. And then we take a staff vote to see kind of what people are really most excited about. And then a group of editors picks the actual finalists based on a mix of things, including the votes, like how excited people were about these technologies and how much potential they had to change our world, but also what stories we might tell about each item. So we try to get a good mix of things on the list, like technologies from different fields and some that are big infrastructure projects that could help us solve major problems that we face as a society, and then others that are more like consumer products that people will be using and incorporate into their lives every day. So we try to get a good mix in terms of the topics and also the type of technology. And in the end, we have to make some tough calls about what makes it and what doesn't make the list.
Yeah, it makes sense. So it's very usual that a technology takes time until it goes through the market and goes through our lives. How do you guys, how do you make sure that a technology will be in the right moment? I mean, if a technology takes 5 or 10 years until it is mature enough to go to the market and to change people's lives, can it appear in the list again? How do you make sure that the lists will be different each year?
Well, you're right. The timing is really important, and we talk a lot about this in our discussions. So there are technologies that didn't make the list this year because we didn't feel like the timing was right. And what I mean by that is what we're looking for are technologies that could really change the way that we live or work or help us address some major societal problem like climate change. And we want technologies on the list that are at a really important moment where they're about to break through in a big way, or maybe they have recently, really broken through. And we define that in a couple of ways. So it could mean like there was a major scientific discovery that is now going to make a certain technology possible that wasn't possible before. or it could mean that a technology is finally getting tested out for the first time in a pilot facility, or that some system has successfully scaled up and is now commercially viable that wasn't commercially viable before. So it can be kind of different for each technology, but we really do try and identify things that are at a critical breakthrough moment, and we think hard about each technology on the list and kind of what it means in the context of that item.
Yeah, and another important thing that I always question myself when this kind of list, especially from MIT Technology Review, which is always very related with the top-notch technologies in the world. Is the fact that there is a delay before a technology there is in such hype arrives in developing countries. Why is it important to Brazilians to consume this list right away? Why is it important for us to see the 2023 list and not the 2020 or 2021, considering that there is this delay that we always have until these technologies come to the markets like Brazil, to a market like Brazil?
Sure, that's a great question. I mean, I think one reason you might want to take a look is just to satisfy your own curiosity and, kind of understand like where the leading edge of technology is today, even if they're not all things that you might, have in your daily life or work immediately available. I do think like it's an interesting glimpse into what is possible through technology today and kind of where it's headed. And you can use the list and read through it as a way of thinking about that. And just satisfying your own kind of curiosity and intellectual curiosity about where this is all headed. And then I will say that there are technologies that that might take a little bit longer to kind of get out into the world in many different places, but there are others that are actually very immediately accessible and available. So one of the technologies on our list this year is AI that creates images, and there are open source freely available online tools that you can, these image generators powered by AI that you can start to use and play with today. And so there are some things that might take a little longer, and then there's others that you might actually be able to start experimenting with today online.
Yeah, perfect. That makes sense. I'm pretty sure that we have possibilities in this list for Brazilian, managers and executives, and of course for everyone that have the curiosity to understand what kind of technology will change our lives. That's important, but I would love to hear your opinion on that. And you mentioned the generative AI. I'd like to go through the technologies of this year's list. Which one caught your attention, and what do you think it's going to be in a shorter period of time?
Well, there's a couple. I mean, everything on the list is interesting to me for different reasons. So I'll start with a couple, and then if there's others that you're interested in discussing, we could certainly, run through them as well. But a few of the ones that I personally was kind of most intrigued by include a couple of the biotech related items. So for example, we have on our list this year, CRISPR for high cholesterol. And I'm sure many of your readers and people in the audience will have heard of CRISPR. It's a technology that's about a decade old now, a gene editing tool. And up to this point, it has really been used primarily to try and treat rare genetic conditions. So most of us have not directly, benefited from CRISPR yet in a medical context. And CRISPR is still a little bit risky. There are errors that can happen when you cut out a gene and mistakes that can be made there. But one recent development that we thought was really interesting and had a lot of potential was the first trial of using CRISPR to treat a very common condition, which is high cholesterol. So there's billions of people around the world that have high cholesterol, and there was a woman who got the first CRISPR-based treatment to lower her cholesterol permanently last year in a brand new trial. And that treatment is based on a form of CRISPR that doesn't just cut genes out, but it can change a single letter of DNA. So it can switch like an A to a T or a C to a G, and it's more precise and could have fewer side effects for that reason. So the potential of CRISPR, these trials are just getting started, but the potential of CRISPR to possibly treat diseases that are very, very common and could help millions or billions of people was really exciting for me to read and learn about as part of this year's list.
Yeah, and this year we had an election of the 11th technology. Why is it important to hear the audience about it?
Yes, you're right. The audience can vote on what they think the 11th breakthrough should be. We have a poll at the very end of our list where audience members can vote until March 1st. That's when the voting closes. And we added this because of kind of what I talked about earlier. We know this is a bit of a subjective process. Like, we're making some hard calls. We're deciding what is and isn't going to be on the list. And we want to hear what people think we missed, or what people think should make the list in the form of this 11th breakthrough. So we've given you 4 options that you can vote on, 4 technologies, and those are quantum-ready cryptography, super apps, hydrogen planes, and exascale computing. So if you think one of those deserves a spot on the list, you're really excited about it, or you've seen some real movement in that area recently, then you can go and vote for the 11th breakthrough as part of this year's list.
One interesting thing, we did a podcast with the editors of MIT Technology Review Brasil before the American list was published, and we were talking about the super apps. That was our vote before we see these alternatives.
I love that.
Yeah. So after the election was published, we voted because this was our opinion before it was published. Yeah, cool. Very cool.
Thanks for getting those votes in. Super apps is a really interesting one because they've really, they've been in use for years in certain countries and certain regions of the world, and other areas like the US, they're not really quite there yet, but there's a lot of interest in building and developing them. So that was one where we were thinking hard about like the timing and like what is the right timing. And it's really interesting to get other people's perspective on whether that is like a major part of their world already and part of their life is using these super apps.
Yeah, I think there is a huge space for that on the market, and as we see in China, mm-hmm. I don't know if we will have, a company that will take over everything, and it's kind of a thing that the winner takes all. It's more a problem about how to organize these markets than a problem of technology itself. But I think there is a huge possibility, and a huge opportunity for the one that takes it. Elon Musk told it that he wants to do something around it. I don't know if he will be able to do it, but it will be interesting to see it. And we will be here talking about these movements together.
Yeah, well, I'm really excited to see what happens, in the next year or two here in the US related to super apps. And thank you for getting your votes in. I'm really glad that your team was already kind of thinking about that and contributed to the poll there.
Cool. So one last question, Amy. I would like to hear what can we expect for the list of 2024? What technologies are on the radar? Are you going to see anything different there? Anything about the methodology or new voting things? What will be different next year?
Yeah, I mean, we're still sort of formulating those plans. So we're trying, we've put this year's list out and we're taking a look at kind of how it does and what people find interesting. And then over the next couple of months, we'll be, mapping out our plans for the 2024 list. So there will be more to come on that. But I think it'll be interesting to really watch a number of these areas. 2 of the big areas on our list this year are climate change and artificial intelligence, and particularly with AI. The last 2 years running, we've had a different form of generative AI on the list. So the last year's list, we actually had GPT-3. And this year we have the image generation tools, what we're calling AI that creates images. But the technology in that space is moving so fast. Now we've got ChatGPT, and then we've got like so many interesting experiments going on and announcements happening all the time that it's hard to predict, honestly. But I imagine, I know that we will be looking closely at AI and kind of what's most current there and where that technology is taking us, and especially this fascinating world of generative AI that our reporters are covering so closely. So I do think there will probably be a lot more on that topic for us to explore in the list or in our coverage more generally. And same with climate change. We've got a couple of climate change items on this year's list. We have what we're calling the inevitable EV, the inevitable electric vehicle, and we have battery recycling as well. But I think, there's so much investment recently, particularly in the US, in climate technologies, and there's a lot of really interesting progress in that area. So, I would bet that we would have another couple of climate technologies that make next year's list as well. And you'll just have to stay tuned and see which ones those are.
Super cool. I mean, it was very interesting to hear from you. So we will have the breakthrough technology translated and published in the Brazilian edition that comes up in April. And we will also have a QR code there in order to make people see this interview easily. It will be very interesting to have you on our printed magazine.
Excellent. Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed the conversation. Appreciate your interest.
Thank you. Guys, this was Amy Nordrum, Executive Editor of MIT Technology Review, and stay with us for more at mittechreview.com.br.